Mayakar, and I'm very proud to serve as Deputy Mayor for Neighborhood and Economic Development, and I'd like to welcome you all to this very beautiful building, and really to this important day in the history of the Loop. I wanted to take a moment to start today to read you something from a recent editorial in the Washington Post. That's how all good mornings start. Cities across the nation face a dilemma. Downtown office buildings are more empty as workers prefer the flexibility of working from home a few days a week. Nearly all local leaders agree part of the solution is an office to apartment conversion boom. But there's a problem. City leaders aren't doing enough. Downtowns are at a crossroads. Seeing cranes and scaffolding go up soon is essential to success, and city leaders have to start thinking that way. Well, ladies and gentlemen, I'm proud to say that today we are rising to this historic challenge. Just as under the mayor's leadership, we published the first comprehensive economic recovery plan of any American city, just as we announced the single largest citywide investment in affordable housing in 2021, over $1 billion, just as we secured the largest investment in our South and West Sides neighborhoods in a generation with our $2.2 billion Invest Southwest programs, and just as we worked with Google to make the largest downtown jobs expansion happen in the history of modern Chicago, today we announce that thanks to our mayor, our team in the city, and the great development partners here today, we are making the largest affordable housing commitment ever in downtown Chicago, and that we are also making one of the largest office to residential conversions in the entire country. So we are rising to the challenge of our times with unprecedented equity-centered ambition here in Chicago. And we have one person to thank, and that is our next speaker for making all of this possible. So I'd like you to join me in welcoming up our mayor, Lori Lightfoot.
Good morning, everyone. And I must thank Samir for all the leadership, all the fearless things, all the economic progress that we have made over these very difficult, daunting years. Samir's footprint, his guidance, his fingerprints, his cajoling is all over everything. So Samir, you are going to leave an incredible legacy of accomplishment, and you should be very proud. So thank you. But everything we do takes partnership. And I also want to thank others who are part of that partnership that you'll hear from today. Planning Commissioner Maurice Cox, whose visionary leadership is reshaping all parts and all sectors of our city. So thank you, Maurice, for what you and your team did. Commissioner Marissa Navarro of Housing has got to be one of the most gifted housing leaders in the country, not just in our city, our state, our region. Commissioner, thank you. Well done. And I have to say this because otherwise he'll complain to me later. Thank you, Michael. Thank you, Michael Fastnacht. But in all seriousness, Michael is leading World Business Chicago to higher heights literally every single day. So thank you so much for everything that you and your team at World Business Chicago are doing. Thank you for your partnership. Thank you for your leadership. And importantly for me, thank you for your friendship. Thank you, Michael. And I also want to introduce Michael Edwards, the CEO of Chicago Loop Alliance, who's been a tremendous partner through these very difficult times where we've seen things change dramatically in the downtown core. But Michael and his team have been right there in the trenches with us, thinking creatively and innovatively about how we can revitalize not just LaSalle Street, State Street, but the entire central business district. So thank you, Michael, to you and your team. When I drove up today, I looked across the street to 190 South LaSalle. And some of you know that's really where I began my professional life here in Chicago. Mayor Brown, my law firm, was located there in the John Buck building for years and years and years. And as a kid from a small town in Ohio, coming downtown that summer of 1987, long time ago, and walking into this incredibly beautiful building with gold leaf everywhere, I was amazed that I had the privilege of being in that building. And so I have a great deal of sentiment about the Loop, and particularly LaSalle Street. And then fast forward to my days working at the city's 911 center, and this will make some of you laugh, but recall the fire that happened in the old LaSalle Bank building. My job as a member of the OEMC was the post-fire incident commander, standing on the street outside with a bullhorn, barking orders to city departments about how we could get the building back open, get transit back flowing. And so I have a lot of good, solid memories of being right here in this footprint of LaSalle Street. So you know this, but it bears repeating. LaSalle Street corridor is the historic heart of Chicago's central business district, bar none. For nearly a century, skyscrapers would rise and fill with economic activity from financial institutions, brokerage firms, and other entities that powered Chicago business and our economy. But over the past few years, LaSalle Street has been seeing significant office and retail vacancy rates brought on by the pandemic, but really those trends were starting way before we knew the language of COVID-19. The downtown area is essential to Chicago's success, and it is critical that we revitalize this area to its greatest potential. I appreciate the quote that Samir read from the Washington Post, but I think if we're honest, folks, we're not just meeting the moment now. We have been meeting the moment every single day since the pandemic hit our city, and thinking about what we needed to do to be ahead of the curve, to help our businesses to recover, and not just recover, but to revitalize and restore so that we can move forward and march forward. And frankly, we've done that better than any other city in the country, period. Over these we need not only to encourage the continued return and growth of downtown businesses, but to reimagine the Loop as a mixed-use community that can be home to both office workers and community members beyond the 9-to-5 workday. We're already seeing that. If you look at the census data, one of the places of biggest growth in our city is our downtown. And we need to continue to do everything we can to accelerate that growth, and that's what today's announcement is about. Let me take you back to September of 2022, when we issued an invitation for proposals, an IFP, seeking projects that would reclaim historic properties, innovate their usage, and instill equity in our Loop. Today, we are proud to announce 3 finalists and their proposals that will help revitalize and reimagine this corridor. Plan for more than 1.5 million square feet of office space. I'm proud to announce that the winning projects include the $180 million adaptive reuse of the Monroe Residence and Hotel to create 349 housing units within the upper stories of a 1910 National Register high-rise, as well as 226 key hotel projects in the building's lower floors. A $258 million adaptive reuse of the Field Building to create 430 housing units within a 1934 landmark high-rise, including the activation of more than 80,000 square feet of multi-level retail space. And finally, $130 million adaptive reuse of the LaSalle residences, creating 280 housing units and renovating a full-service restaurant and a variety of tenant amenities. These projects, taken together, will create more than 1,000 mixed-income apartments, of which 318 will be affordable units, for a total of $550 million public and private investment in our great Chicago Loop. And ladies and gentlemen, the significance of more than 300 affordable housing units cannot be overstated. There are presently 0 affordable apartments within the IFP's boundaries, providing virtually no opportunities for working and low-income Chicagoans to live in this corridor. That will change. Providing those housing opportunities will be key in our mission to reimagine LaSalle Street as a mixed-income, mixed-use community, as well as our mission to restore equity downtown. In these buildings are people who work, who clean, who make sure that the buildings are beautiful and lustrous. Shouldn't they also have the opportunity to live downtown within walking distance of their workplace? When we announced this initiative back in September of last year, we were joined by one of the biggest unions that represents these workers, SEIU 1. Those workers will now have an opportunity to be here on the ground, in the buildings, in their neighborhood where they work and now have an opportunity to live. Providing those housing opportunities is going to be important and key, and today's announcement is only the beginning. The 9 responses that DPD received to the IFP demonstrated the incitement about all the possibilities for revitalization. I recall that there were some who said, no one will be interested. No one sees this in the same way that the mayor and her team do. I'm once again happy to prove the critics wrong. Given the IFP's success and stakeholder interest in a more equitable and resilient downtown, DPD and the Department of Housing will be accepting new applications for projects within the entire LaSalle Central TIF district that have a minimum of 30% affordability. So we're reopening the door to opportunity. Additionally, DPD will leverage the Small Business Improvement Fund to fund smaller private projects that will revitalize the corridor's ground floor commercial spaces with neighborhood-oriented uses. And finally, CDOT will simultaneously complete an engineering assessment of the corridor and initiate community engagement for streetscape visioning to create a more inviting public realm. And DCASE and BACP will continue to work with the Chicago Loop Alliance, as well as property owners, to activate storefronts and other spaces and arts and cultural installations. So today is a great day, it's a great vision, but it's just the beginning of what we can do by working together and bringing together lots of different stakeholders to revitalize and reimagine our LaSalle Street corridor. We will be the envy of the nation, and people will once again come to Chicago, as they have throughout these last 4 years, and say, how did you do that? Because we want to take that to our city. When I announced LaSalle Street Reimagined back in 2022, I remarked on how confident I was in the fact that Chicago's best days are still ahead. And today, I believe that more than ever. I cannot wait to see how these 3 proposals shift the dynamic of downtown and ensure it is forever bustling and thriving. And I want to thank the developer teams who are leading the adaptive reuse projects, the Prime Group, Capri Interest, Riverside Investment and Development, and AmTrust Properties. Thank you for your hard work and vision to revitalize the Loop. Thank you for believing in our beloved city of Chicago. I'd like to also thank the other development teams who responded to the IFP, and I'm confident that we will be working together to bring your visions to reality. And finally, I want to thank the city leaders and downtown stakeholders who continue to work hand in hand to support our historic and beautiful downtown. And now, it's my pleasure to invite Maurice Cox to come and say a few words. Commissioner.
Good morning. What a beautiful space to hold this announcement. I want to thank first and foremost Mayor Lightfoot, for marrying equity and innovation to produce something of historic consequence for the city. I also want to thank everyone for just joining us in what is a new chapter for LaSalle, one of the city's most storied great streets. And some of you may remember when we were writing the introduction in September, when the mayor announced that the tax increment financing would be made available for projects to repurpose the corridor's at the time pervasive commercial vacancies, but to do it to create a signature mixed income community. So we received 9 proposals. 6 months later, here we are, ready to write what is a new era for a mixed-use, truly diverse trio of historic buildings, all within 1 block of each other. From the historic preservation community, this is an enormous, enormous win, and we thank them for always lifting up these buildings and allowing us to do something of this magnitude. I want to congratulate again the teams, the Riverside Investment and Development and Amtrak Properties, which will be repurposing the field building at 135 South LaSalle, the Prime Group, which will be creating the LaSalle Residences at 208 South LaSalle Street, and the Prime Group and Capri Interests, which will be creating the Monroe Residence and Hotel at 111 West Monroe Street. To be clear, this did not just start 6 months ago. Many, many, many stakeholders have been involved in the LaSalle Reimagine initiative, and I'd like to thank them and the reports that were done to bring us to this point. The Central City Recovery Roadmap, which was mentioned and issued in 2021, the ULI Technical Assistance Panel, who did a report in early 2022, and multiple recent studies and projections involving the future of commercial space on LaSalle. I think all of these efforts identified some of the same fundamental needs. One, we needed people. We needed to reoccupy millions of square feet of vacant space, and millions of dollars would be needed in financial resources to help modernize what are century-old skyscrapers. And most importantly, we needed leadership to ensure that LaSalle's improvements were sustainable and equitable for all Chicagoans. So again, just thank you, Mayor Lightfoot, for connecting the city's needs to its resources and helping to implement these 3 projects that are valued at more than $550 million on behalf of the entire city. I also want to note that but for the city's TIF investment, the adaptive reuse projects downtown could theoretically, move forward, but they would move forward with no affordability requirement, given the high density zoning that exists throughout the loop. So some could move forward by right, but most likely with producing extremely high-end apartments. But a high-end residential district is no more sustainable than a single-purpose office district. So that's where the TIF assistance comes in, requiring at least 30% of the total units to be affordable for people making about 60% of the area median income. Now, Commissioner Navarro will elaborate on the affordability component in a moment, but essentially that means that anyone with a full-time job could someday find themselves living in this building. If they work in an office, if they tend a bar, if they clean a hotel room, they could live here. That is monumental. Chicago is the only city in the country that has fashioned this conversion effort in such an equitable and innovative way. So I'm thrilled that we're leading. For many reasons that we all know, this area is surrounded by one of the most transit-rich neighborhoods anywhere to be found. It's just steps away from employment opportunities, hotels, restaurants, schools, businesses. And from the outset, I would dare say that Chicago dared to be different, right? With the belief that people of all incomes can live side by side. And we could create a signature neighborhood right here in the Loop to be that proof of concept. So to make sure that these new homes will have all the amenities that we come to think of in successful neighborhoods, DPD is preparing for the next phase of this effort, which is small businesses. We are making available millions of dollars to the Small Business Improvement Fund starting in September. The grants go up to $250,000 to help revitalize storefronts and lobbies towards a neighborhood-oriented use that are essential to the kind of live, work, play environment. So imagine coming into this space and seeing it activated with retail options, with cultural opportunities. You can take these amazing spaces and turn them into places that are very, very special to the culture of LaSalle. We also want to encourage businesses that are located on the south and west side to locate in the Loop. And so we're adding an additional 50,000 to businesses that are expanding from the west and south sides. So before I turn it over to Commissioner Navarra, let's fast forward on LaSalle Street just 5 years from now, when today's projects will be opened and occupied, when Google's new headquarters at the Thompson Center will be fully functioning, when former bank halls and grand spaces like this are repurposed for productive uses, and when LaSalle's plazas and sidewalks offer more opportunities to linger, to relax, and to enjoy this new investment. As has been said, Chicago is probably one of the most advanced and forward-thinking, equity-based cities, big cities in America, and this corridor will be a testament to that vision. So I want to congratulate all the teams for their work. I also just want to give a special shout out to my team at DPD in the Central Area Planning team, being led by Cindy Rubeck, who is in the house. There you are. And with her on this journey has been Emily Throne and Melvin Wesley. Thank you all for your efforts. So I get the pleasure of introducing the other part of this amazing journey, Commissioner Navarra, and the early conversations we had on what an equitable Chicago looks like. Today we're here to celebrate that achievement. Commissioner Navarra.
Good morning. Thank you, Commissioner Cox. It is such an honor to stand with Mayor Lightfoot and all of you for this significant achievement. And as the housing voice on this stage, I just want to start with a basic definition. Housing is affordable to you if you are paying no more than 30% of your income toward your housing costs. Some people can't reach that 30% benchmark either because their income is too low, or the rent is too high, or both. So we believe that those who need a subsidy to live affordably should have just as many choices of where they can live as those who don't need a subsidy to pay 30% of their income or less toward their housing. We all know that Chicago has a way to go to make that goal a reality, but today, the step we're announcing is a perfect example of how we get there. More than 1,000 mixed income apartments in the heart of Chicago's downtown. And it's really the result of months and months of work, a holistic alignment of priorities and values across the city department, the mayor's office. I really want to again commend the mayor's leadership in saying this is an important use of our public dollars. And I also want to thank our really dedicated staff across departments. Again, Cindy Chan Rubick, and from the Department of Housing, Ricardo Lopez, Brian Essenberg, Carol Breams. Thanks everybody for your hard work on this. So with these 1,000 mixed income apartments, LaSalle Reimagine initiative brings 318 affordable units to the Loop. And that might sound like just a number, so I want to put it in context for you just a little bit. For a long time, so the mayor said there's zero, and she's right, zero affordable places to live on LaSalle Street proper. For a long time, there were 2 units, 1, 2, in the CBD as a whole. Recently, a development completed lease up, so we're now at a whopping 9 affordable places to call home in the Loop. So that's 9 households out of the entire city that could live affordably downtown. 318 affordable units would be nearly a 3,433% increase. That's 318 households that could not otherwise walk to work in the Loop, 318 heads of household who could say yes to a job offer, who might otherwise have said no because the commute seemed impossible, 318 parents who could send their kids to South Loop Elementary and be steps from every mode of public transit that we have to offer in the city. So the affordable units in each of these finalist proposals are for people earning an average of 60% of the area median income. That's about $50,000 for a 2-person household. So importantly, that's the average. We also will be going up to lower incomes and to a bit higher as well. So as we've talked about, this is helping us address not only our shortage of affordable housing, but also the issue of unused and largely abandoned spaces. This adaptive reuse is so important for our downtown and throughout the city. It's been a perfect marriage of opportunity and need. And by asking developers to tackle this both simultaneously, we've been able to realize an inventive and creative solution. And as Samira said, when I talk to reporters that are national, this is what they ask me about. It is a national phenomenon that cities are trying to figure out, and I'm so proud that people want government to be innovative. They want us to be taking chances and trying things. This is what we did here, and we got an enormous response. Here's the last thing I want to say. We all know that Chicago is a city with profound racial and economic segregation. We didn't get that way by accident, and we're not going to change it without the kind of deliberate action that we're taking today. You can't say, it's such a shame that Chicago is such a segregated city, and then in the next breath say, but let's redevelop LaSalle Street with 0 affordable housing. You can't do that, and we're not doing that. And to those who have said, wow, this is expensive, let me say this: be under no illusion that our extreme state of racial and economic segregation is cost neutral. It is not. And I know a little something about this because I led a study about what segregation costs Chicago. And I can tell you definitively that it costs us $8 billion in lost GDP, 30% more homicides, and 83,000 lost bachelor's degrees. So yes, Mayor Lightfoot and the team are willing to spend a little tiff to change that and to give people who need a subsidy to live affordably 318 more options to do so here in the Loop. So steps like these are what help us transform Chicago into the more equitable city we should all want it to be. Congratulations to the winning teams. Thank you for joining us in making this mixed income transformation a reality on LaSalle Street. And I'd like to introduce Michael Edwards from the Chicago Loop Alliance to come up next. Thank you.
Good morning, everyone. Michael Edwards, President and CEO of the Chicago Loop Alliance, and thank you, Mayor Lightfoot and your team, for all your commitments, not only to LaSalle Street, but to downtown. I've had the pleasure to work with you through a pandemic, gotten very close, and very much appreciate all of your efforts. The Chicago Loop Alliance mission is to create, manage, and promote positive experiences that attract all people to the Loop, not just some people, but all people to the Loop, and accelerate its economic recovery. We do this through a number of practice areas, including making the Loop a cleaner and safer place than people expect, through planning for both today and tomorrow, through advocacy on important issues such as homelessness and affordable housing, by activating streets with events like Sundays on State, and by supporting continued reinvention of the Loop through new uses, such as residential living on LaSalle Street. New investment in the LaSalle Street corridor and the Loop, such as Google's purchase of the Thompson Center, and today's announcements of the LaSalle Reimagine property winners, congratulations to the winners, show that the City of Chicago is actively trying to innovate and reshape the downtown experience. The CLA is proud to have played a small part in that. We were part of the ULI Reimagine process. There was a number of recommendations, and a lot of it was around, would people actually come to LaSalle Street? So last summer, the Chicago Loop Alliance produced an alley activation, which attracted over 4,000 people to the alley at Quincy Street, right at the southern end of LaSalle Street, for a night of fun and activity in this enormously beautiful setting with all of these iconic buildings, demonstrating to people who, frankly, had never been on LaSalle Street at night to see these buildings, just what a miraculous place it is. So one small step to demonstrate that people would, in fact, come back to LaSalle Street. With the city's support, we also did something called LaSalle Aglow, which was to put artists in windows to make those windows pop. These are vacant storefronts to show people that LaSalle Street is alive and we're taking steps towards some future that is being discussed right now and today. So those are really important things to demonstrate the viability of LaSalle Street going forward. As part of Chicago Loop Alliance work in analyzing and predicting sectors that are impacting the loop, we recently released a residential impact study recognizing the significant contributions that loop residents, affordable or not, make to our economy here in the loop. And this provides some grounding, economic grounding, for what we're discussing today. The Loop continues to be the fastest growing neighborhood in the city and the fastest growing residential downtown in the entire country. The recent study found that the Loop residential growth continued throughout the pandemic, with an estimated 46,400 people living in the Loop. And while they're projecting an additional 1,000 units of housing per year, the study also revealed this lack of affordable housing that Commissioner Navarro spoke about earlier. As such, the CLA is fully in support of the projects we're celebrating today as a way to begin addressing the affordable housing issue in the Loop. Another point from the residential study is that I think is relevant today is the economic impact of residents. That's why we did the study. Like, what do these residents do in the Loop? And what we found is that they spend about $430 million a year in the Loop as just part of their living in the Loop. That's a lot of money. What we also found out is that $940 million they spend outside of the Loop. So the residential population is an extremely strong economic driver, and one that the more and more we can get into the Loop, will begin to support and fill up those storefronts with retail, food and beverage, and all the other things that make the downtown Loop kind of go. So we're really excited about these projects. We think they offer a lot, and and clearly these residential developments will be a critical piece of the future of the Loop. Optimism surrounds the future of the Loop and Chicago. The central business districts need to evolve and integrate multiple use destinations of arts, culture, residential living, and higher education, along with offices. The Chicago Loop Alliance will continue to champion the Loop as a leader in what a global downtowns can be through planning and advocacy, creating a clean, safe, and enjoyable environment for visitors, and strengthening strategic partnerships such as these for the benefit of Chicagoans. I always say that wrong. Chicagoans. Sorry. We say Buffalonians where I'm from, so forgive me. We know there are still lots of mountains to climb, there's lots of challenges ahead, but the Loop is an attractive, innovative, and dynamic place to live, and starting right here on LaSalle Street, let's make it happen. Thank you.
Good morning, everyone. You might ask yourself, what is there left to say? After our mayor spoke, 2 commissioners, 1 amazing deputy mayor and Michael Edwards. Nothing. Really nothing. But there's still 2 reasons why I'm up here today when I got asked to close today's event. First, I know not all of you are the diligent listeners that you pretend to be, so in a minute I will share the cliff notes of today's event. And secondly, Marissa mentioned this is news for the nation. I'm here to tell you this is global, international news, because every urban center around the globe asks themselves, how can we reimagine our more commercial corridors in an equitable manner? There's no one better to talk about international than a man with an accent. Sometimes the medium is the message. So here are the cliff notes. Today's announcement is about reimagining a thriving anchor corridor a beautiful street, like Mike Reschke tells me every single day, an important historical street for Chicago. A place for work, live, and play. We have to reimagining like we do so many other things. At the same time, today's announcement is not just about revitalizing an important street, but also make another critical step towards ending segregation in our city. A small but mighty step. To have 30% of this over 1,000 units, it's affordable units, ensures that Chicago has more good days out of our city as the most diverse city in our nation, not the most segregated one. And so thank you to all who made it happen. Thank you, John. Thank you, Mike. We'll watch what you're building here. And you have my promise, World Business Chicago is fully behind these initiatives to make sure you will build here and make the city even more beautiful. Thank you to our mayor, to my friend Samir, to both commissioners and everyone else who supported this initiative and will continue to support this initiative, because today is just one small step to make this a reality. So thank you. Please feel free. I think I paid for the drinks and food like always. So please stay here and enjoy yourself. Thank you all.